God bless you. Today we are continuing in the book of First Kings in the New Jerusalem Holy Bible, and we are in chapter 10, starting at verse 14, Solomon's wealth. The weight of gold received annually by Solomon amounted to 666 talents of gold, besides what tolls in foreign trade, as well as everything the Arab kings and the provincial governors brought in. King Solomon made 200 great shields of beaten gold, 600 shekels of gold going into one shield, also 300 small shields of beaten gold, 3 mina of gold going into one shield. And the king put these into the house of the forest of Lebanon. The king also made a great ivory throne, which he overlaid with refined gold. The throne had 6 steps, a back with a rounded top, and arms on each side of the seat. 2 lions stood beside the arms, and 12 lions stood on each side of the 6 steps. Nothing like it had ever been made in any other kingdom. All King Solomon's drinking vessels were of gold, and all the plate in the house of the forest of Lebanon was of pure gold. Silver was little thought of in Solomon's days, since the king had a fleet of Tarshish at sea with Hiram's fleet, and once every 3 years the fleet of Tarshish would come back, laden with gold and silver, ivory, apes, and baboons. For riches and for wisdom, King Solomon surpassed all kings on earth. And the whole world consulted Solomon to hear the wisdom which God had implanted in his heart. And everyone would bring a present with him, things made of silver, things made of gold, robes, armor, spices, horses, and mules. And this went on year after year. Solomon's chariots and cavalry. Solomon then built up a force of chariots and cavalry. He had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horses. These he stationed in the chariot towns and near the king in Jerusalem. In Jerusalem the king made silver as common as stones, and cedar wood as plentiful as sycamore in the lowlands. Solomon's horses were imported from Musur and Sicilia. The king's dealers acquired them from Cilicia at the prevailing price. A chariot was imported from Egypt for 600 silver shekels, and a horse from Cilicia for 150. They also supplied the Hittite and the Armenian kings, who all used them as middlemen. Section D. His decline. Solomon's wives, chapter 11. King Solomon loved many foreign women, not only Pharaoh's daughter, but Moabites, Edomites, Sidonians, and Hittites, from those peoples of whom Yahweh had said to the Israelites, "You are not to go among them, nor they among you, or they will be sure to sway your hearts to their own gods." But Solomon was deeply attached to them. He had 700 wives of royal rank and 300 concubines. When Solomon grew old, his wives swayed his heart to other gods, and his heart was not wholly with Yahweh his God, as his father David had been. Solomon became a follower of Astarte, and goddess of Sidonians, and of Milcom, the Ammonite abomination. He did what was displeasing to Yahweh, and was not wholeheartedly follower of Yahweh, as his father David had been. Then it was that Solomon built a high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, on the mountain to the east of Jerusalem, and to Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. He did the same for all his foreign wives, who offered incense and sacrifice to their gods. Yahweh was angry with Solomon because his heart had turned away from Yahweh, God of Israel, who had twice appeared to him and had forbidden him to to follow other gods. But he did not carry out Yahweh's order. Yahweh therefore said to Solomon, "Since you have behaved like this, and have not kept my covenant or the laws which I laid down for you, I will tear the kingdom away from you and give it to one of your servants, for your father David's sake. However, I shall not do this during your lifetime, but shall tear it out of your son's hands. Even so, I shall not tear the whole kingdom from him. For the sake of my servant David, and for the sake of Jerusalem, which I have chosen, I shall leave your son one tribe." Solomon's foreign enemies. Yahweh raised an enemy against Solomon, Hadad the Edomite, of the kingly stock of Edom. And David had crushed Edom. Joab the army commander had gone to bury the dead and had slaughtered the entire male population of Edom. Joab stayed there with all Israel for 6 months until he had exterminated the entire male population of Edom. But Hadad, with a number of Edomites in his father's service, had fled to Egypt. Hadad had been only a boy at the time. They set out from Midian, and on reaching Paran, took a number of men from Paran with them, and went on to Egypt, to Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, who provided him with a house, undertook to maintain him, and assigned him an estate. Hadad became a great favorite of Pharaoh, who gave him his own wife's sister in marriage, the sister of the great lady Tamphenes. The sister of Tamphenes bore him his son Jeroboam, whom Tamphenes brought up in Pharaoh's palace. Jeroboam living in Pharaoh's palace with Pharaoh's own children. But when news reached Hadad in Egypt that David had fallen asleep with his ancestors and that Joab the army commander was dead, he said to Pharaoh, "Give me leave to go that I may return to my own country. What do you lack here with me?" Pharaoh said, "For you to want to go back to your country." "Nothing," he replied, "but please let me go." Hence the harm which Hadad caused. He loathed Israel and ruled Edom. God raised a second enemy against Solomon, Rezon, son of Eliada. He had fled from his master, Hadaezer, king of Zobah. A number of men having rallied to him, he became a leader of a marauding band, which then massacred by David. Rezon captured Damascus and settled there, and became king of Damascus. He was hostile to Israel as long as Solomon lived. The revolt of Jeroboam. Jeroboam was the son of Nebat, an Ephraimite from Zeradah. The name of his mother, a widow, was Zurahah. He was in Solomon's service, but revolted against the king. This is the account of his revolt. Solomon was building the city Millo, and closing the breach in the city of David his father. Now this Jeroboam was a man of great energy. Solomon, noticing how the young man set about his work, put him in charge of all the forced labor of the house of Joseph. One day, when Jeroboam had gone out of Jerusalem, the prophet Ahijah of Shiloh accosted him on the road. Ahijah was wearing a new cloak. The two of them were in the open country by themselves. Ahijah took the new cloak which he was wearing and tore it into 12 strips, saying to Jeroboam, "Take 10 strips for yourself, for Yahweh, God of Israel, says this: I am going to tear the kingdom from Solomon's hand and give 10 tribes to you. He will keep 1 tribe for the sake of my servant David and for the sake of Jerusalem. the city which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel, for he has forsaken to worship. 2. Has forsaken me to worship a star, the goddess of the Sidonians, Chemosh, the god of Moab, Milcom, the god of Ammonites. He has not followed my ways by doing what I regard as right, or by keeping my laws and ordinances as his father David did. But it is not from his hands that I will take the kingdom, since I have made him a prince for as long as he lives, for the sake of my servant David, who kept my commandments and laws. I shall, however, take the kingdom from the hand of his son, and I shall give it to you, that is, the 10 tribes. I shall give 1 tribe to his son, so that my servant David may always have a lamp in my presence in Jerusalem, the city which I have chosen as a dwelling place for my name. You, none the less, I shall appoint to rule over as much as you wish, and you will be king of Israel, if you listen to all my orders and follow my ways, by doing what I regard as right, and by keeping my laws and commandments as my servant David did. Then I shall be with you, and shall build you an enduring Then I shall be with you, and shall build you as enduring a dynasty as the one which I built for David. I shall give Israel to you, and I shall humble the descendants of David, but not forever. Solomon tried to kill Jeroboam, but he made off and fled to Egypt, to Shishak, king of Egypt, and he remained in Egypt until Solomon's death. The end of the reign of Solomon. The rest of the history of Solomon, his entire career, his wisdom, is this not recorded in the book of Annals of Solomon? Solomon's reign in Jerusalem over all Israel lasted 40 years. When Solomon fell asleep with his ancestors, he was buried in the city of David his father. His son, Rehoboam, succeeded him. And we'll stop there. And tomorrow, God willing, we'll start in section 3, the political and religious schism. I love you.